Right, you're on.
Started. So we're going to be talking about wildflowers today in our photography class. As you guys are aware, if this is not your first year in Texas, there will be wildflowers coming up very soon. It will be a little bit later than normal. The cold weather we're going to have the next week or so is going to definitely push it back, as well as we had really low rainfall in September through November of last year, which is meaning that our season in general is just not going to be as good as it has been in previous years. But there will always be small patches. You can always frame your pictures so that it looks like it's this huge field of flowers when it's really just a small little section of it. So we're going to get right into it. Feel free to stop me at any time if you have any questions. But like I said, we typically see our wildflowers beginning, and you see a lot of bluebonnets starting about late February, early March, definitely going to be early March this year, I think, and then blooming into late April and May. While the bluebonnets do not last very long, I would say if you aren't taking pictures of wildflowers in mid to early March, you're probably going to be getting more of the other kinds of wildflowers that you see in Texas. It's really dependent on the rainfall from the previous year. So like if in 2021 we have a lot of rainfall in September through November, and then we have an early frost and we start getting warmer weathers in February of next year, then we can see a huge growth, which is always really nice. But we are expecting a smaller season this year. So you got to be on point. We're hoping as we get more people in our program to get vaccinated and we start to see, we're starting to see slower growth in COVID rates. So we can see that we're definitely making differences as we go into the new year, but we're hoping that we can get a wildflower trip in March or April. And that would be basically small capacity, multiple trips in a day, so that you're not feeling like we only hit 7 people and that's it. You're going to be able to go either early in the morning or in the afternoon, so it'll fit a lot of people's schedule. We'll find a location, and if we can't do the trips, then we'll find a location in Leandro that's not a long driving distance and kind of just plan times to meet up there. That way we can still take some pictures and have fun out in the wildflowers. So first thing I want to talk about when we get into what do you need to look out for when you're taking pictures is etiquette when it comes to wildflower fields. For the most part, whenever you see wildflowers, if it's not on the side of the road in like one of our highways, it's likely on private land. And so you need to be aware of who owns the property, how you're getting into the property. If you're having to hop over a fence, you probably should just maybe find a new place. If you happen to like slip through some barbed wire or so. But in general, because a lot of it's going to be private land, you just do be careful of your impact on the ground. So I know many people have heard this myth that it is illegal to pick bluebonnets. It is not. You are welcome to pick bluebonnets. You really shouldn't pick bluebonnets because they don't really last very long. And if it is private property, that could be considered, that falls into the realm of trespassing and kind of, destruction of property almost. And if you're in a state park, it's definitely a big no-no. It's a Class C misdemeanor if you're trying to remove any kind of natural resource from a state park. So just be very aware of it. Our goal one of the biggest ways you can leave no trace is by taking pictures. You take pictures, you have this digital memory saved for as long as you can keep that file going, and you don't have to take a flower home. You don't have to take anything away. And when you take flowers away, you're taking it away from somebody else, so you really want to keep that kind of mentality in mind. Make sure whenever you're walking through a field of flowers, if you are a large group, so say you're trying to take a picture of your family and there's not an established path, meaning something where people have very clearly walked through, the flowers are not growing there, then what you want to do is you want to spread out. This is a big thing I learned in Boy Scouting when it comes to leave no trace, is when you are walking through like a small prairie or a meadow, if you spread out so that nobody's walking over the same person's footsteps, that the plants will be able to recover from that. Now, granted, that's within reason. If you have 50 people walking through a meadow, it's probably better just to pick one path because given your size of people, you're going to make a big difference. And so it's best to just kind of reduce that. Also, if you can, try to walk around patches rather than straight through them. Not only because you don't want to ruin the pictures that you want to take later, but there are snakes. We are Texas. There are going to be a lot of snakes. They're going to be coming out in the woodworks, and they love to just sit there in the middle of those wildflowers because there's a lot of insects, which attract small birds and mice and small rodents, which then are food for the snakes. Always bring a stick or something you can do to kind of tap in front of you. People always said, you'll be able to hear a rattlesnake's rattle. But that's really no longer the case, as they have started to adapt to wild hog populations, where wild hog populations, because of their thick skin and all their fat on their body, they're able to take a couple of shots from a rattlesnake and not die from their venom. And they keep an eye out for the rattlesnake's rattle because they are opportunistic omnivores. Pigs, wild hogs will eat small mice. They'll eat whatever they need to eat when they're hungry, and snakes, for the most part, cannot outrun a pig. And a lot of times, you're going to see that these snakes, the rattlesnakes, have adapted to waiting to rattle until you're really stepping on them. And at that point, it's just too late. At that point, you're too close. It's not as safe in situations. So you really want to make sure that you are poking ahead of yourself as you're walking through. So walking on now into equipment. So obviously, besides a camera, there's gonna be a lot of things that you can do, and really three items I would recommend. An external flash. Lighting is crucial when you are taking wildflower pictures, and it's actually recommended that you take pictures on not a really bright day, because the sunlight can be very harsh on wildflowers, which are a lot of color. And if you get a lot of sunlight in them, they can kind of become oversaturated, and it just, the colors start to meld together, or they start to have like a glare on them. So having an external flash, something that you can, kind of like on a cloudy day, you can angle elsewhere. So it's not just coming straight from where your camera's coming from, it's coming from a lower angle, it's coming from the side, and that's going to be able to kind of help alleviate those shadows that are caused from either an overhead light or just the sunlight in general. If you don't have an external flash, because they can be quite expensive, and they, for the most part, if you're shooting with a smartphone camera, the fact of having an external flash is really something that's quite difficult. Then I recommend you get just a light reflector. You've probably seen them a lot. They're those big reflective circles that you see people holding underneath somebody's, like a model's face, to kind of redirect the light. They're very affordable. I want to say Amazon, there's a Newer Photography, which is a Chinese-based company that just puts things out under this one brand. And they have a fairly good quality. It's not great, but it's affordable, and it's a little bit durable, of like a 5-in-1 set. So it has one of those reflectors, and honestly, if you're really looking for budget, you could use the reflectors that you have, that you put in the car windshield, especially the ones that kind of unfold, like kind of like pop out, because they're nice and tight. They're going to be able to kind of get a even reflected. They do the exact same thing, except photography ones are a lot more shinier, and you can get different colors as well. Because if you really want that golden color, you want to have a golden reflector. But those are really easy. I think the 5-in-1 set is $20 on Amazon. And that gives you a lot of different colors. And, all you have to do is just, as you're taking pictures, prop it up right in front of you, kind of just on your knee or on your legs, and then it'll take that light from wherever the light's coming from, and it'll just reflect whatever it can back at the flower. And this is a good way to kind of get those shadows from underneath the flower, to kind of target those shadows, because those are the ones that are going to be a bit more harder to stop. And finally, because wildflowers, they're not really a moving subject outside of wind, but you really want to get them in really crisp detail, and you're going to need to adjust your settings, and you're likely going to have either a really fast shutter speed, or maybe even a slower shutter speed to allow for more light, depending on when you're taking the picture. And just in all those situations, I highly recommend you find a tripod. There are tripods for smartphones, if that's how you take pictures. There are also tripods, of course, for DSLRs. They're extremely helpful, not just for in this situation where you want to make sure that your pictures are they're held tight, so you're going to get crisp and clean pictures. But it'll also, you don't have to, if you have a tripod, you don't have to bend down onto the ground to take pictures from that same, like, the eye level of the flower. You can set your tripod down and kind of take a step back or sit on a stool, and you can see the picture, and then you don't have to really get all the way down there. And I think that really helps a lot. And though you can find those in Amazon, you can find them pretty much everywhere. I think even Goodwill sells tripods for your smartphone. And then, of course, you're going to be outdoors, so you want to bring a hat, something that's going to cover your head, a walking stick, of course, for snakes, and just for stability, suitable clothing and shoes, and water. Now, if you are going to be taking pictures of yourself and you want to look really nice, just be aware of I guess if you're touching the wildflowers, just be very careful when you're getting down to get near the flowers, that you're looking around and making sure there's no poison ivy, poison oak, fire ants, any kind of thing that's gonna cause you issue when you're trying to take a picture in, say, like a sundress or just short sleeve or stuff like that. Typically, if you're the photographer, you probably want to be going out in pants and maybe even a long sleeve t-shirt, something light and airy, but still something that's going to cover you up, so you just have that extra protection from the elements. All right. So we are going now into lighting. Lighting is very crucial when it comes to taking pictures of wildflower. One, they're outdoors, so you're not going to have as much control of your lighting. And two, because of their really vibrant colors, too much light is a problem. You need to find that good balance between good amount of light as well as good amount of shadows. All right. And so, you want to make sure that you're taking pictures on a cloudy or overcast day. It's okay if the sun comes in every now and then. It's okay if the clouds create large swaths of shadows. You want to make sure that you're kind of inhibiting the harshness of the sunlight, especially when we're in Texas. It's going to be rarely sunny, and most wildflowers grow in fields where there's not going to be a tree. There's not going to be anything that cause any kind of shade. So you're going to get the full intensity of the sun when you're taking these pictures. And so you really want to avoid taking pictures in the middle of the day, and you can have a cloudy and overcast day and still have really nice bright pictures through your settings and through the use of a flash as well. So there's ways to get around that. But ultimately, the biggest thing to take away from here is never take a picture on like noon on a really sunny day, because those pictures are not going to be as good as if you took it, on a cloudy day. But you can take pictures during the golden hour is the one exception. So if it's a nice bright day and there's no cloud in the sky, then just after sunset or just before sunset and just after sunrise, those are going to be your ideal times to take pictures. There is something to keep in mind, is that when you are at sunrise and sunset, the sun isn't above. The sun's kind of, it's closer to the horizon. So depending on where you are, you yourself will cast shadows, or your lens will have the full sun going straight into that. So you just want to be, the sun rises east to west, so take pictures north to south. That way the sun is never going to be completely in your vision, as well as your shadows are never going to be really like straight over what the subject of the picture that you're looking to take. All right. So we have some pictures here, and this is an example of a really bright picture, and you can see the colors kind of, as you get further back, you're starting to lose the detail. I mean, of course, you're going to lose a little bit of detail when it comes to a picture. It's not really close, but this picture looks really saturated, and saturated is where your colors are really vibrant. You can cause, and you can adjust in your settings to desaturate a picture, so it kind of dampens some of the colors. But when if you have to make extreme changes when you're editing, it's going to start to come off as unnatural. And so in situations like this, and we can see there's a cloud in the sky, but outside of that, it looks like it's taken middle of the day where the sun's going to be straight down. I'm not really seeing any kind of shadows from the trees, so it definitely looks like the sun is coming straight down. And in my opinion, this picture, the colors just are so bright, they kind of just meld together, and they're almost glaring when it comes to looking at it. Additionally, just kind of looking at this picture, he could have picked, the photographer could have picked a different background. You have some power lines there. If you had kind of just shifted away and looked more at the tree line, would have been an even more beautiful picture, as well as could have gotten lower, get more negative space of the sky or the trees or something that's not the flowers. And so here we can see these are a bit more cloudy. The one on the right, definitely more cloudy. The one on the left, taken during the golden hour, you can tell that, and on the right, the one on the right is not the best quality of a picture. You can kind of see some of the blurriness of it, but you're really getting that. It's not, the colors aren't too kind of assaulting, they're nice, and they're bright when you want them to be, and then for everything else, you can see clear details in them. You can see shadow lines are going to come in from the petals and stuff such like that. So really like those pictures. So positioning, and I am talking a mile a minute, so you guys feel free as well. Whenever you want to ask questions, just ask questions. I'm always happy to.
Corey?
Yes.
I do have a question, Corey. You're breaking up just a little bit, so I hope I'm not interrupting anybody else. But my name's Tina, and I had a question when you were talking about the lighting and the other thing. I think I've seen them before. They look like umbrellas that you use to direct the light.
Yes.
When you were saying you put it kind of at your knees, are you meaning that it would be like, positioned kind of concave, and then it would be facing the flowers?
Yes. So you mentioned the umbrella. Those are typically the reflectors that are on stands, and they typically have a light aimed right at them. But the reflector that would work best with taking wildflower pictures is going to look a lot more like what you put in your windshield of your car. So it's just a flat.
Okay.
It's just a flat piece with a kind of like a bendable plastic around that's keeping the tarp straight. And for in those situations, if this is your feet, you would have it at an angle right here, because if it's straight up, it's not going to collect any light unless the light is coming straight at it. So it has to be at least a little bit of angle. And so you have to angle it so that it shines right at the flower. And when you have one of those, and you don't think like, oh, there's, you wouldn't think if you just put I guess it's kind of like the situation, if you have a mirror and you just start pointing it, you can start to see the brightness of the light wherever you're pointing your mirror, or your your watch face when you're driving. I always get shined right in my eye, or my wife will be sitting next to me and her phone will reflect it. So that's basically what you're trying to do. And it's not a perfect science. It's kind of hard when it comes to those not mirror reflective, but still like aluminum foil tile reflective, where you're not really going to get like a perfect pinpoint. You're going to get just kind of like this large circle of light that you can kind of start to see moving around. But yes, to get back to your original question, you would kind of just tilt it against your legs. That way it has that. If you have like a chair or a stool, you can tilt it against that, or you can use other wood or flowers. It doesn't have to be just in front of you. You can also, if you want light to come from each angle, but I always think that they work a lot better when they are lower and reflecting light back up, so they understand the flower.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah. I wish if I was home, I'd be able to show you guys what they look like, because I actually have the one I talked about from Amazon. But afterwards, I'll pull it up on the screen. So getting into positioning, there are a lot of tips here, and these tips are a lot easier if you have a tripod. You want to get low. Wildflowers, unless you're taking a picture of the large landscape, and even when you're taking a picture of a large landscape, sometimes you could benefit to get a bit closer to the flower, but you're going to get better. The flower is going to look better if you're looking at it straight on. Now, some flowers have open up, they straight up. And so for those flowers, of course, you want to kind of angle it and get straight onto the flowers. But for a lot of flowers, you're going to see they've either tilted over or they're coming off the side. And so you want to get into it so that you are looking directly at the flower. I have a picture of it. If we can go right, so like right here. So with this picture, we are looking directly at the flower. We're getting a lot of detail from that as well. When we have the effect where you have a bokeh effect, where your background is blurred, and then you can get that by adjusting your field of view. So you really want to get nice in the level of the flower, and we have some other ones as well. And to do that, you're probably going to need to get low. Now, you don't have to always get low. Sometimes just your camera needs to get low, but unless you have a tripod, trying to get your camera nice and level on the ground is going to be a bit difficult. As well as, don't just pay attention to your flower, pay attention to what's behind the flower, pay attention to the full frame of your picture. Sometimes you can get a really beautiful flower and then in the background, it's a road or it's power lines, and because especially in Texas, you're going to have large quantities of wildflowers. You're not going to just walk around into a field and find just one bluebonnet. You're probably going to find 300-400 bluebonnets because they grow and they kind of expand out when they grow. And because of that, you're going to have lots of options to take pictures from. So just take the time, find a picture that's going to have a good background because it's going to make all the difference. And if you just try to really rush into that. And then also, I find it's easy, not only because you're going to be adjusting your settings a lot, but also because of the way you position for these. When you go to a field of wildflowers, pick either a portrait or a landscape. Portrait being you're focusing on the flower, you're getting nice and close up. Landscape being you're focusing on the flower in addition to the background. You're focusing on the scenery as a whole rather than just the subject. You're going to find it's going to be a lot easier to get better photos if you just focus on one of those than if you try to get everything. Not saying you can't go find a really nice place for landscape and still take a picture of a flower close up. But if you really focus yourself, not only will you find yourself having better pictures, you'll have less impact on the wildflowers as well. Because if you go to take pictures of a portrait, you're likely going to be at a different location than if you try to get a landscape picture. And that's going to involve walking from your car to a different location. Potentially, it could have been better to park someplace else and walk in versus having to park on one side of the park and say, oh, I really like that hill. Let me just walk over there, So just keep that in mind. We have such a large season. 1 week can be portrait, 1 week can be landscape, 1 week can be this, 1 week can be that, and you'll have plenty of time to take the pictures. So you can see here, this is really your eye level, getting right in line with that plane of view of the flower. And you can see here, although the picture is kind of blurry, it's just not as appealing for these flowers to just be straight up when their eye level is lower. It's straight on it, and you don't get the good grasp of the pictures. Not only this, if you look at this from a landscape point of view, this is a pretty terrible background. I mean, it's grass. You're cutting off some of the flowers. There's weeds in here every now and then, and I'm sure this is probably a really nice location, but they just didn't really think it through when they took this picture. And so you can see here, now both of these, now the one on the left, you might consider the plane of view being kind of underneath, but because this has such kind of like a closed face of this flower, right there on the side, you're low with it, but you're right in line with the flower. That was a very excellent choice for the photographer for their eye level. And then on the right, you have a bad choice. Same picture, kind of, same style of flower, but just taken overhead, and it just doesn't look very appealing. When you can even tell on the inside of these petals, they have a beautiful speckled coloring to them that if he had just gone inside that flower, it would have been a completely different photo, almost incomparable. So here we have some landscape pictures, beautiful. And he could do the same thing here, or the photographer can do the same thing. They can get really close up to some of these pictures, but you can tell that this location is suitable for landscape pictures. And so it's best to focus on that, give that your effort, give that your extra eye to detail, and you're going to get better pictures that way. So where we're talking, we'll dive into picking the flower, and then we'll have picking the landscape will be next. And then I'll have just an opportunity or time for you guys to talk if you have any questions. So picking the flower. When you're shooting for just an individual flower, you want to find a place that's going to give you lots of shooting opportunities. So if you find, often this is like near the edge of a field of flowers, or if you're able to maneuver your way into the middle flower of a field of flowers safely and not invasively, those are going to be good locations. Don't choose a patch of flower where that's the only patch you have, where you don't have, your options are very limited. You want to have lots of options, because sometimes as you're taking pictures of the flower, the wind will change, the makeup, the way the flowers are organized will change, and then now what initially was not very good has become amazing. And so you want to have those opportunities. We want to have multiple opportunities in one little area where you can kind of just take a picture here and shift, take some more pictures here, shift around, take pictures here. And the people that you're showing these pictures to, it will look like you were in completely different areas, the way you frame those pictures. Also, be sure to pick a flower in good shape. Nobody really likes to see a flower that's starting to wilt or that has brown edges on it. Also, do your best not to force a flower into, taking a picture. I know I'm a bad proponent of this, and I need to work on it. But when I take pictures, if I want to, like, say I'm out in a forest and I see this really nice kind of pathway, but there's just this weird twig that's just sticking out, and I'll go and I'll try to bend it off to the side. When it comes to flowers, they're not really, if you try to bend them, if you try to push them out, there's a chance you're going to kill it, and then that's just going to ruin that little section of one dead flower with all these nice new flowers. There are more than enough flowers to find a really good one without having to force it to be good. So just take the time, pick one good location. That way you're not walking around everywhere, but at the same time, you have lots of opportunities just right nearby. So we have a little bit of a example here. So we have a roadside here. Where do you guys think might be, like, obviously from where the photographer took a picture is a good spot, because that's where they're taking the picture. But in looking in this picture, where do you guys think might be a good spot to take a picture from?
I should have got down lower.
Got down lower. Yep.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then maybe from the orange over on the red face toward the tree rather than the road. The road looks cool, but you would have got, I don't know what that is. Is that a fence, you think, over here?
This over here, the left is a fence, so you have a line going all down, and then of course this is a culvert.
Yeah, if you would have gone from the road toward the tree, I think would have been pretty, because it would have had that rustic looking fence.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you have all these little places where there's lots of green grass, but no wildflowers. Those are excellent opportunities. Those are good pathways to walk through. You still want to follow that meadow rule where you're not following the steps of anybody else unless there's an already very established path. As well as, if you can safely make your way, getting near these fence lines is going to be good, because that way you have your back to something, and so you're not missing on anything behind you. But at the same time, like Kathy was saying, taking a picture with that fence in the background is also a little bit nicer of a picture. I definitely think getting lower would have helped this person. If he had angled it and kind of cut it a little bit to the left, he could have gotten a portion of the road still. He could have gotten more of these trees. And I think, this looks like it's in the hill country, and it looks like if he had angled a bit more up, he could have gotten some hills and some better negative space. Still a very nice picture overall.
I like the road. I like the road, but he probably could have cut out the things.
Go on.
And it does look like, too, in his defense, he was trying to use the rule of thirds, because he did bump that horizon line up a little bit, which gives you more of the flowers.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Oh, yes, definitely. So let's go with our next one. So we have a fun little dog running through.
Oh, yeah. That's an annual thing for us. We take our dog to the blue.
This is a good example of, just showing you how easy it is for snakes to hide. This is a bluebonnet bush, patch. This is like as vibrant as you could probably get, and you can't see the ground. All you see is bluebonnet. And those rattlesnakes love to just live and crawl up inside there. Most often, they have snake holes that were taken over by bluebonnets. There could be a snake hole in the middle of this where the snake went into hibernation, or you really just went to sleep, so to say, in the winter and woke up with just a front yard full of these nice, beautiful flowers, which works out for them. So when we're here and taking pictures, it's kind of difficult to make your way through this brush, but you can see along the edge here where, kind of the bluebonnets hit the edge of the brush. Those are good locations to walk through. Of course, always making sure you're tapping with with your stick, but those are good because, you can get to the edge. You're not going to interfere with as much of the bluebonnets. Sitting underneath these shades and kind of looking back at where the photographer is, we only have to assume that they're still bluebonnets behind us, because you can see in the picture there's bluebonnets even further out. So taking it from that way, where I like what he was. I like what they were trying to do with the background, but I really do not like that brush. There's just this ugly pile of brush. It would have looked better, when it comes down to that. That's just, it looks, it's natural, of course, but at the same time, it's not eye appealing. And I love the dog, of course, running through there. But be very careful when you take your animals out there. They are just as susceptible to snakes as they are to everything else, as well as, just make sure you check them for insects as well afterwards. And the big thing that's a big problem in Texas is chiggers. I don't know if you guys are familiar with chiggers. They burrow into your skin. They love moist situations. There are a lot of easy ways to get rid of them and prevent them. Sulfur powder on your shoes, so kind of just right on the edge of your shoe where your ankle is, really works out well, because that's where they dig into your skin, is that exposed skin that's moist at the very top of your sock. As well as, if you do get chiggers, just go and soak your feet in a pool. The chlorine, if you soak in them, if you soak your feet long enough, the chlorine will get into their chiggers kind of home in your skin, and they'll die from that as well. So those are some of your options there. But if you don't have access to either of those, just make sure you're wearing, your jeans go all the way down to your pants, and then you have long socks that go up. That way, it's going to make it more difficult for them to get into your skin. They are not fun.
So Corey,
Yes.
when you've shot some of these pictures, have you encountered snakes? And so you're putting your stick and going along, do they go running, or do they slither away when you have your stick there, or what's the stick for?
The stick is to alert you to them. So most often not, no, the snake is not going to run away. If you poke them with a stick, they're going to strike the stick.
Oh,
so the idea is that they're going to make themselves known. So if you start poking around, a lot of the snakes, the ones you really need to worry to kind of to keep an eye out, they're more aggressive and they're not going to be afraid of you. Now, a coral snake, they're a bit more afraid, but like a cottonmouth or a rattlesnake, they're very aggressive snakes. They'll coil up and they'll hold their ground whenever you come close. And so what you're really doing is the stick is there to make first contact with the snake versus your shoe making first contact with the snake. Because the snake is not going to say anything until you are within striking range, and you won't know that until it's already struck at you. So, you have a nice big boot, that's great, but they can strike pretty high. Rattlesnakes are quite large. It's not unheard of that if you're walking along, you can get almost struck midway through your through your hamstring or your shin, and that's going to be above most people's boots. So the stick is there not to scare them away. Of course, you can then use them to poke out of the way if you really wanted that. But most often, if you encounter a snake, just leave them be, find someplace else to go to. But the stick is there so that's out in front of you. That's what's going to get the snake's attention, and not anything that's vulnerable like your skin.
Have you seen them or no?
I have seen a few snakes. I've been lucky enough not to see them when taking pictures of wildflowers, but I have seen them multiple times when taking pictures out in nature. I haven't encountered any rattlesnakes, but I have encountered a lot of cottonmouths or copperheads, and those are not fun at all.
Corey,
yes.
When my son was in Cub Scouts, the leader had told us that you use your walking stick to tap the ground, because the vibration is what will cause the snakes to just leave the area. He said most snakes really don't want to encounter you when you're walking through. And if you tap your stick as you go along, it kind of lets them know. With everybody wearing tennis shoes, it doesn't really give the snake a heads up that you're around. But if you tap that stick, that vibration will send it another direction, hopefully.
Yes, and that does work for most snakes. The only ones really that I think you're going to have those issues with, they're going to be more aggressive ones. When they hear something coming, their thought process to, okay, let me see what it's going to do, and I'm going to fight them. And that's really going to be your copperhead and your rattlesnakes, because they're very aggressive. But that doesn't mean that you still want to encounter a rat snake or anything else, because just because they don't have venom doesn't mean they don't still bite you, and that doesn't mean that's still not comfortable. But yes, yeah. I mean, when you're smacking your stick in front of you, the snake will feel the vibrations. They'll hear that. We kind of.
I'm going to bring an air horn.
That's great, but it definitely, a stick is better. I'm fairly certain, but snakes don't have the best of hearing.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure they hear through their tongue and their smell more often than not. And it's kind of weird to say they hear through their smell, but their tongue kind of can pick up on those vibrations. All right, so now we're going to picking the landscape. So I would say, because when you're taking the landscape pictures, you're in most pictures, majority of your picture is going to be the negative space. Now, of course, negative space doesn't mean nothing. Negative space means whatever is not your subject. So if the flower is your subject, you're going to have a lot of negative space, because that's part of a landscape picture, is that it's that balance between negative space and subject, as well as between focus of the subject by the viewer and focus of the background. So when you're taking landscape pictures, the background is the most important part, because the wildflowers are pretty much always going to look great because they're beautiful. But your background is what's going to be difficult to control, or not difficult to control, but difficult to really pinpoint that perfect background. So using a wider angle lens will help you get closer to your subject, as well as capturing your background. Now, of course, you can use a macro lens as well. Something with a low millimeter or lens number really allows you to shrink that distance between you and the subject. So macro lenses are the ones where you can get really close, and then you can zoom in even further beyond that. You can get those really in detail pictures of flowers where you're getting tiny insects on the flowers. But those lens and wide angle lenses also work well for landscape photos, because you can get nice and close to the subject. It can look larger than life than it usually does, and then you have the wide background in the back. And then, of course, not everything has to be in focus. The bokeh effect, which is where your subject's in focus and either the foreground, the background, or out of focus, are always really nice, especially in fields of wildflower, because it turns the background into a blurry, kind of like just an abstract painting, so to say. And you can have landscape doesn't have to be large backgrounds. You can take a landscape picture of a small patch of flowers, and it's really just the focusing on that fact of the mix of background or negative space and the subject. Okay, so we'll go into some examples here. So you can see here they got really close to those flowers. These flowers likely look a bit larger than they should, given in space. I mean, you can see these flowers look much bigger than the mountains in the background. Of course, there's that distance and stuff, but even still, they look like very large flowers because of how close they got to them. They got nice and low. You can see this is almost a 50-50 negative space to subject, which is it's a good balance. You never want to have more subject than negative space when it comes down to that. I shouldn't say you never want to. Likelihood is you're probably not going to have more subject than negative space, because at that point you're getting into that portrait, and you might as well have focused more of that effort onto that subject rather than trying to incorporate everything. And so when we can see here, so this is the landscape. you don't really, in my mind, it's still a close-up picture, even though it is, you got the nice background there. And they used a nice use of negative space. You have right along the right-hand side, all those flowers, and then right to the left, just that edge, which is really nice. Where you kind of like the edge of nature almost. I am not a huge fan of that, of the vertical or the horizontal lines just kind of dividing the picture back there. I kind of think it distracts the fence line. I would have probably angled it more of an angle, so I would have seen this corner be shifted more over. That's just me talking here. As well as this is a great opportunity, one of those places where I talk about where you can get good landscape and good portrait photos, because the photographer can look directly at these photos and just kind of get right up in there, and it's going to have a nice background because of how lush these wildflowers are. And this is a good example right here where it's landscape, but all you see is flowers. But you also have that bokeh effect where in the middle of the picture, that's what's in focus, but things in front and things behind are out of focus. And you can do that by adjusting your field of view and your aperture as well. And we have just another, I like this picture. It's not the best. One, it's at an angle. It's not level. That's something you can do in post edit. You can shift it over, as well as that's something you can do with your tripod. Sometimes your ground is not going to be level. It's very possible this person's standing straight and he has a tripod, but the land itself is slightly tilted. And for this picture, I would have shifted it a little bit more. I would have also gotten a little bit lower to get the full tree, and to hopefully, and you can see just barely on the edge right here in the background, you can kind of just see some telephone poles, just in these little unsightly little things. If they had gotten a little bit lower, they would have gotten more tree, and maybe, and I'm not, I can't say for certain, but maybe depending on how low they got, that would have cut out that little, it would have cut out so that your horizon would have been all flower. And I think that would have been better if you had hidden the tree line, because this definitely looks like it was taken in Texas because it's very flat. In fact, it says Bee Creek photo. So I think that's Bee Creek nearby, but I'm not sure. And I love this picture because and it's a very Texan thing to have just rusty pieces of farm equipment in the back. He could have definitely gotten lower because it would have been nice, once again, to see the tops of these trees. When these trees are cut off like that, it would have been either better to go lower and see more sky, or to reverse it and bring, to kind of cut off this top section of it and then get, more flower in there as well. And so that's all I have here for you guys in my PowerPoint. Let me go on Amazon real quick so I can show you guys that reflector that I was talking about. This is what it looks like. It's the circle. So what it actually comes with is it's just one of these. So it says it's 5, but that's a very deceptive marketing on them. It's just one that has 2 colors. So one side is white, one side is not white. It has a bag that is black. So that's how you get the black one. Then it has a, so you have this first one and the last one, there's slightly different colors of white. And it's just has to do with the way the white has kind of goes through. And additionally, you have the bag, which is going to create your black. So if you wanted to mute your light a bit more, and then you have a one side gold and one side silver cover that goes over the white one. And so I got this. It's very affordable. They're cheap quality, meaning they're going to last as long as you take care of it. But at the same time, if you don't take care of your equipment, this will very much, you'll see the wear as it going on, as it keeps going on, and you'll start to see, there are better products out there, but it's $23. It's very affordable. It works. It's really nice because it's all in one little, you have all 5 without having to change. And I see this here. Actually, the bag itself the black bag that covers it over, that is what has the coating on the inside there. And so that's going to be really nice. So basically you just kind of flip that bag inside out and then it's there.
This is not strong enough to bash the snakes with it.
No. If you
Shelley,
want,
you're not gonna run into snakes. I've been here so long, I've never seen a snake in the bluebonnet.
Well,
Yeah.
I was thinking like you got this big old circle thing, just bash the crap out of them and get rid of them, you know?
Like, that's like paper.
if you really want that, I would recommend you get like a monopod. So it's like it's not a tripod, but it's just one stand. So that will function as your walking stick as well as your snake basher and provide support.
Basher.
I need a tank and an air horn. And then I'll be ready to take my pictures.
They're hip boots.
And I also bought one of these.
Hey, Shelley,
Yeah.
I was raised military, so we just do our carry and conceal any snakes that we do battle with.
Oh,
I'm
just
sure
shoot
that's
'em.
not allowed on our outings that we go. Are we allowed to carry on our outings or no?
I don't think
Got a license.
I'm not allowed to stop you, nor am I
Oh,
allowed
okay.
to ask if you have a license.
Tina, I'm
Oh.
walking with you. I'm walking right behind you. You shoot.
I
those
got a
suckers.
license, so I'll be the
I
I'll
have
be
my
the
air
sheriff.
horn and you shoot them.
Okay.
And so this is the tripod that I just got for Christmas. And
Ooh, nice.
it has a monopod
really
in
cool.
the inside as well. So that's what I really got it for, is because I wanted something that had both. So if I was taking pictures and I thought, oh, I needed to take a picture where I'm leaning over or something, or if I really wanted to be a bit more portable, then I could just take that monopod. It would give me that, it still has that support. You still have a little bit of human error when swaying around, because it's not going to be perfect, but it's a lot better than nothing and holding in your hand. And then
Corey, if you stick your camera on there, how do you push the button?
you just press it.
Oh,
If you're
so you-
taking pictures on a tripod, I always recommend, if there's no rush to take that picture, to put it on a timer. And that's
Okay.
mostly because you will see, as you go in there and you press the button, there's a little bit of shake. There's always going to be a little bit of shake. But if you press the button and you set a timer, then you can walk away
and
it will have recovered itself. I always do a 10-second timer.
Okay.
It's also a big thing whenever I'm taking pictures for astronomy. So I'm trying to take pictures of the night sky, and you can't have any sort of shake. So I set my timer to 20 seconds. I take a picture and I walk away. And even though I'll notice as I'm walking away and I'm looking at my my screen that it's shaking even from my foot, from walking away. And eventually it all stops. It takes the picture. Boom, done. It's beautiful.
So set the timer to take the picture and run away from the snakes, and then you're here, right?
Okay.
You should not have told her about the snakes. She's gonna be
I'm a
afraid.
city girl. I don't do this country stuff. Ugh.
Well, then
You
I
have
shouldn't tell you that
snakes in
almost
the
every.
subdivision.
I shouldn't tell you that almost every water body in Texas has alligators in it.
That's okay. I can handle those. I just don't like the freaking snakes.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
good
but
thing.
the snakes over here by the
Tell
veterans
me.
park.
I don't want to know. I don't want
There's
to
snakes.
know. Don't tell me, Kathy.
She'll quit walking now.
The good thing about the
I'm staying in my house.
the good thing about alligators is that if you see the alligators, then that means you're safe, because they don't bother with you if you see them. If they see you and you see them, you're not food. If you see them, but they don't think that you can see them, so if they're under the water, those are the ones that are going to attack.
Their eyes
Will my
stick
air
out.
horn work with the alligators too?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Can they hear it?
Yes and no. Yes.
Pop them in the nose.
No, don't do that.
Well,
Give them a wide berth space.
otherwise, you know I'm around, okay? When you hear the air horn, I was there.
Excellent. Well, do you ladies have any questions or anything before?
No, I was going to suggest also, I mean, if and when we get to go take a little ride, but 29 from here to Burnett usually has some really good
Mhm.
fields, and you can pull off onto the side of the road, you know, and be out of the traffic business. There, I can't remember, when we went last year, it was on 29, before you, no, after Burnett, I think. I don't remember now at this point, but there's some good fields. And at, when we lived in Round Rock by Dell Computers,
Mhm.
you could park in their parking lot, and they had this huge field right next door. So not to, and I mentioned yesterday the HEB Center, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of businesses like to put out wildflowers, and they kind of it's they're kind of all over. A lot of churches do wildflowers as well because they like their the people who go to the churches to be able to take pictures. Yes, as Kathy said, going out to the hill country, you're going to see a lot of wildflowers along those roads, as well as on our major highways too, like 290 going out always.
Oh, yeah.
The
Going down to
Texas
Houston.
Department of Transportation has it's one of their programs to spread wildflowers on all of our state highways. And that's like
Ladybird
Yeah.
Johnson started
Yeah,
that.
what about the Wildflower Center? They have wildflowers.
also
Yeah,
has
they just don't have big
Etiquette Park.
fields like.
They do have one big field. They've kind of redone some of it.
Mhm. So it'd be interesting to
guess it
see
depends on
those
what time of
places
year you
and
get
how it
there.
comes out this year. But there's definitely going to be wildflower fields in town because it's so easy to get bluebonnet seeds, and people love bluebonnets that it's almost impossible to not be able to find them. The only question is whether you can find one on public property where it's not so damaged from everyone taking pictures. Because if there's only one field in Leander, then that field is going to be overused, and it's not going to be. It'll be good for some,
Trampled.
but it won't be the best. Yeah, and it'll be trampled.
I'll give you my camera, Corey, and you can take my picture.
I'll take a picture from the window of the bus.
Yeah. Well, he can Photoshop you in the field.
I don't want to be in the picture. You just take my camera, go out
Oh,
there,
I got
beat
you.
the crap out of the snakes, and take the picture, and I'll stay on the bus.
Have you never taken any bluebonnet pictures, Shelley?
We took the train out to Burnett. We saw
Fun.
from the train. We took them. But no, I haven't. I mean, we've gone down to Houston for cruises and down to 90. There's tons of them, but it's kind of dangerous to stop on the side of the road because it's so
you need to
busy
get
there.
a side road.
So other than that and the ones in my yard, no, I haven't.
And then Shelley and I live in the same subdivision, so there's people always griping because we have fields, little blotches of them in our neighborhood, and people get mad.
You'll see them and then the mowers mow them down.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh,
Well,
Yep,
thank you,
thanks,
Corey.
Corey.
That was
of course.
Thank you,
I'm glad
Corey.
you guys enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions, and once it gets closer to wildflower season, I'll be sure to put an email out telling you guys where you can find your wildflowers. So,
Okay.
all right. Well, until next time, y'all have a great day.
Bye. Thanks, Corey.
Bye.
See you soon.
Bye,
Bye,
everybody.
Howard.